Hey guys, it's Scott with Scottie B Cards, and in this video, the World Series is over, and we're going to talk about whose cards are impacted negatively or positively by the results. The Yankees have won the World Series. I hope that I'm not spoiling it for you. It happened last night. But I want to talk about what's going to happen to players' legacies, players' cards, players' investment potential, all that stuff of the top players of these two particular teams. One thing I want to note is these are all entirely my opinions, and in no way am I saying you should buy players' cards or sell players' cards. Just everything I'm sharing is my perspective on my opinion on these players' cards right now in this moment as of the day after the World Series. With that being said, I'll go really quick into this. The very first thing I'll say, happy Halloween. It's Halloween today, which is great. But let's talk about the Dodgers. I think the player who may be impacted the most, and this is not me being a fanboy, is Mookie Betts. Mookie Betts' legacy is finished. It's done. He has 3 World Series. He has 6 Silver Sluggers, 6 Gold Gloves, like 5 top 2 MVP finishes. Like his legacy is done with 3 World Series. He had questions around the 2018 one because he was bad in the postseason. There were questions around the 2020 one because it was the COVID season where they didn't count it as legitimate. This is his 3rd one, fully legitimate. Not only was he vital in the World Series, he had the go-ahead RBI in Game 5 that held, and they won the World Series because of that sac fly that he had. He also had a game-tying RBI in Game 1 on a sac fly. He also had added to the lead multiple times. He was good. He was very vital for them. And not only that, he was good in the whole postseason. The whole thing was Mookie Betts is 0 for his last 23 in the postseason. He broke that. He was the Dodgers' highest OPS guy for the whole postseason. So for that reason, his cards, I think, have the highest floor now. His floor is established. He is a Hall of Famer, and that's that. His legacy is done. If you ask me, my biggest concern about Mookie Betts, it was the postseason performance and the World Series. Now he has 3, and he was good in the postseason. So I think as an overall investment in the hobby, there's not many guys better than Betts, if that makes sense. Do I think his cards are undervalued and should buy them? I don't know about that. Mookie is going to decline eventually, just like everybody else. But now he can decline with the Dodgers, and he's not going to be crucified by Dodgers fans. He has 2 World Series with them. One is 2020, one is this year. He's been an MVP caliber player for multiple years. He can have a normal aging curve now, and everything will be okay. And that reason, I think Mookie Betts cards maybe help the most at keeping them high. Let's talk about Ohtani. Ohtani did really good in the NLCS. He was not that great in the DS, and he was not good at all in the World Series. You can point to his shoulder dislocation, which is a legitimate thing to point to, but regardless, he played in the World Series, so it's fair game, and his numbers were bad. So that'll be pointed at. So he has a World Series, which is great. It feels like he needs one more. I think he's going to have at least multiple chances to win one more. I think he will win one more. But regardless, this helps his legacy. He's already higher than Trout because now he has 3 MVPs and a World Series, and he won an MVP that year on a World Series team. All of that helps Ohtani. Ohtani's cards, this is what he needed to maintain his floor higher as well. If he would have lost the World Series with the numbers he had, the Yankees somehow come back, it would have really hurt his cards. But because he was able to pull it through, and this is the funny thing about baseball, Judge actually ended with like an 833 OPS in the World Series, which is pretty good. Honestly, it's like a 125 to 130 WRC plus in the World Series. Some of that may be revisionist history because some of that came in the last game, but still he showed up in the last game. Ohtani had like a 400 OPS, and that could be because he was hurt, but regardless, if you'd have switched those 2 players, the Yankees still would have lost and the Dodgers would have won. It was so hyped for them, and it came out to be the other people on the team, and the Dodgers were just a better baseball team. But for Ohtani, this helps his legacy, but I think what will really push him over the top is being like what Freddie Freeman did this year and having big World Series moments, because Ohtani did not have that, unfortunately. You can point to the double that he hit that turned into him going to third base. Mookie then hit a sac fly to bring him in to tie the game, but that was more of just defensive incompetence by the Yankees, which we saw the entire series. They're one of the most poor defensive teams. They handed the Dodgers Game 1. Juan Soto not cutting that ball off in the outfield or got past him. There was a triple. That would have been a double. That led to a sac fly to get the game closer. And then Gleyber Torres not catching a ball that led to Ohtani getting to third base. That led to a tie game. Both of those runs, that game would have been over essentially if it wasn't for those 2 defensive mistakes. And then obviously we saw what happened in Game 5 and other mistakes throughout the series. So for Ohtani, it helps. I don't think it's going to be a huge bump. I actually would not be surprised if Ohtani cards drop a little bit in the offseason before we get hype heading into spring training, simply because the hype's over. He didn't do anything big, and it's very, what have you done for me lately? But for his legacy, it's good. Freddie Freeman, there's not much to say. Freddie Freeman was great. Freddie Freeman had, 4 home runs in 4 games? And then even in Game 5, he hit one run to the wall that was a home run in 21 out of 30 parks with a 96% hit probability. Aaron Judge robbed that. It was a great play by Judge. Unfortunately, he had a not so great play later we can talk about. But regardless, Freddie Freeman, I think his legacy is higher as well. I know obviously this is clear, but a lot of times players win the World Series and it doesn't do much for him. Freddie winning the World Series MVP is a big deal for his cards, in my opinion, and I think he'll be remembered by Dodgers fans for a long, long time because of it. If he would have just won the World Series and would have been like a 500 OPS guy, it wouldn't have mattered. But this really helps Freddie, I think, and now he's more so a household name than he was prior. So that's good for him. Let's talk about the Yankees. Let's start with Giancarlo Stanton. I think he is the Yankee with the most that gained this postseason. He had, I think, 7 home runs. He was really good overall, and he came up in clutch moments. He was viewed as kind of like just an aged veteran who obviously missed the Hall of Fame in a lot of people's eyes. His Hall of Fame candidacy and odds are going to be spoken about the same way Ortiz was spoken about. I know Ortiz led to a World Series, and I think he won a World Series MVP. But the point is with Stanton, he was a good postseason performer. That helps with the fan base. I do think that Stanton has a higher probability of the Hall of Fame now, not saying he'll get in, but this does help. So for that reason, I think for Stanton, helps his cards probably the most of any Yankee, pretty immensely to be fully honest. Then we have Juan Soto. Juan Soto had a good postseason. His World Series, he was good. Even in Game 5, he got on base 3 times. It's unfortunate the last at-bat in the 8th inning, he didn't get on base before Judge hit a double. If he would have, he would probably scored, so that's unfortunate to tie the game. But regardless, he had a good postseason in general. He had the big, not walk-off hit, it was a go-ahead home run in the top of the 10th against the Guardians in the ALCS, which is big for his cards. Juan Soto is perennially proving that he is a World Series performer. He already has a World Series. This loss doesn't really impact his legacy. He just needs to sign with the Yankees. And at this point, I'm not convinced he's going to. I'm not saying I don't think he will. I just don't think it's a slam dunk. I could totally see the Mets going for Soto and offering $100 million more than the Yankees. Not even exaggerating. And I think if that happens, he actually probably fits better in their playoff window anyways. Wherever Soto goes, he's going to be in the postseason for years to come. He proves he's valuable. He might irk some people with the way that he does stuff, but regardless, for Juan Soto, I think this loss doesn't do much for him. He's proven he's valuable. He's going to get a mega contract soon in the next few months. And then Aaron Judge. Let's talk about Aaron Judge. He did not have a good postseason. It wasn't bad. It wasn't a horrible postseason like people want to say. He actually, for the championship win probability added, which is a metric looking at like in moments if they're able to come through, he was actually a positive player for the whole postseason. And in the World Series, he was only negative 1%, which is not bad. Derek Jeter for his whole career is like 1 or 2% total. So he's only negative 1% in the World Series. He was at negative 10 before he had a big game. He had an RBI in Game 4, and they had a really big Game 5, to be honest. He was the win probability added leader in that game of 37%. The hard thing is that error really hurts him. But at the same time, I don't think it's fair. And you can say, oh, well, he's the captain. You should make that call. Everybody makes errors. Mookie Betts makes errors. Gold Glovers make errors. Tommy Edman made a ton of errors, and the team lifted him up and got out of it. Realistically, they were up 5-0. He made an error. I don't think it's on Judge, if that makes sense. Another error followed. Gerrit Cole would have covered first, then the inning would have been over. If Anthony Rizzo would have charged the ball like he should have, the inning would have been over. Both of them were just so relieved that a ground ball was hit that neither of them did their job. And that's what caused Geritt Cole then to mentally like spiral and just become fatigued. And because of that, with Aaron Judge, he might be remembered. I don't think that's fair. Luckily for Aaron Judge, he had a home run and a double in Game 5. If he didn't have that, his cards would be more impacted. I think Aaron Judge cards will be fine in the relative short term. I think he'll have another shot at the postseason. His team might not have a cakewalk to the World Series like he had this year. It wasn't a super hard path compared to the Dodgers. And the AL's not super strong next year. There's a real chance he wins MVP again. Bobby Witt may have something to say about that, and Gunnar Henderson, but I think Judge is the frontrunner for MVP next year too. He is 33. It's too bad he didn't win the World Series because that may have been his only real shot to win a World Series. So how will that impact his cards? Ted Williams, Barry Bonds, a bunch of other great players did not win a World. Ken Griffey Jr., Mike Trout, Bryce Harper, other Hall of Famer all-time greats didn't win a World Series, so it's not really fair to attack him. Technically, Aaron Judge had better World Series stats than Bryce Harper did when he made the World Series. So it's one of those things where in the moment, it feels really stressful and sad, but I think he'll be okay. I really do. And I just bought a really expensive Aaron Judge card, so maybe I'm biased, but I tried not to be. I think he'll be okay in the long run. And after that is Geritt Cole. 0 earned runs, even though there were 5 runs scored on him. So he's still one of the all-time leading ERA leaders in the postseason. His start was gritty. He left that game still in the lead 6-5. He still was in position for the win. And unfortunately, Tommy Kahnle just couldn't throw a freaking strike. That was so painful to see. And it all goes back to Jazz. Jazz Chisholm couldn't stop a ground ball in the the top of the 8th, which led to them scoring. And the Yankees are one of the worst defensive teams I've ever seen. This year, Gleyber Torres is the most lackadaisical player I've ever seen at second base. And because of that, that's what led to their downfall. But realistically, one thing that's going to hang over Geritt Cole, whether fair or not, is if you just covered first like a routine play, he was easily going to beat Mookie to the bag. People will say, well, Mookie would have beaten him. He would not have beaten him. It always feels that way. Mookie's not that fast. He's like 45th percentile in sprint speed. He's not that fast. So it's one of those things where that's going to hurt a little bit, but luckily for his career, we're looking at postseason stats in the future. They will look really good still because they were unearned runs because of the Judge, and then following the Judge era was the Anthony Volpe era. So overall, Geritt Cole cards, he's gritty. I think Yankees fans like Geritt Cole, but it's unfortunate for his legacy. He didn't get that win and he didn't make that play. He could have left that inning basically up 5-0 with only like 70 pitches thrown. Could have probably finished the whole game out. So I think for Geritt Cole cards, I don't think nothing really happens to them because it's exactly the same as it was prior. If he would have won that game, I think they would have been a little bit of a bump. But overall, that's my thoughts on those players' cards. Let me know in the comments down below if I'm off base. But overall, Yankees, learn to play defense. If you did, you'd probably be tied in this series or even down 3-2 at this moment going to LA. So unfortunate. Sorry, Yankees fans. Other than that, I will see you in the next video.